So the banh mi is actually an American Vietnamese food?
So I'm not sure 100%, but because, like, obviously, New Orleans is like a French,
Yeah.
very influenced area, and Vietnamese people went over there, just like kind of like the cultures mixed, and they wanted to make these sandwiches, and they're like, oh, well, we got this fucking French bread lying around, like, let's use this and put fucking pickled vegetables and a fried meat or whatever, or pate
Yes.
and whatever. And yeah, it's weird because it's like something so good like that couldn't have happened without cultures colliding and like
Yes. Cultural
making like,
diffusion.
yeah, cultural diffusion, but also like fucking, I don't get why people don't like that sometimes.
They don't like cultural diffusion.
Yeah, or like, I mean, I get like when I see like a fucking white dude running like a Japanese restaurant or like a Chinese restaurant, I'm like, all right, that's probably not gonna be the best.
Yeah.
But also, I don't get like the hate for it.
Yeah, I
Like
think
it's just like a personal preference thing for me, unless like you hear like, oh no, don't worry about it. Like he trained in fucking Hunan or some shit or like whatever. Like
yeah. I've never understood really how, like, I've never understood, because there is obviously a fine line between appropriation and diffusion. And I think some of the best things that, at least America in particular, because we are such a melting pot of cultures, so many of the things that have come out of some of the best things come out of different cultures kind of putting their own little, like, swing on this idea. Like, you know, the Vietnamese bring over their type of meat and the pickled vegetables, and then they match with the French bread, and it makes this whole new, like, chicken tikka masala is my favorite, probably one of my top favorite just dishes of anything, of any cuisine ever. And it's a British and Indian combination. Like
Yeah.
the masala was a thing in Indian cuisine, but then they melded it with the cream and other shit like that, and it became this whole other thing. And that's a perfect example of two cultures kind of bringing themselves to the table, and just like, and it's not done on purpose. It's just a natural occurrence. You know, people are around the same areas and they just kind of meld together. I've never personally understood it. Like, I've always found it to be flattering. You know, we've talked about it a billion times, but like when people, if I hear like a bouzouki in a song, like a Greek instrument in a song, or when I see people like on campus, like Greek life, and they all use the Greek letters and shit like that, it's like, that's cool. Like, I think it's cool that all these fucking 20-year-old retards at Towson University know the Greek alphabet. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool. I'm sorry, not retards. My bad. I'm trying to be nice right now and I can't. But you know what I mean. You know, I think when you have a culture that you're proud of, you want other people to embrace it, you know? And it's almost like, you know, I don't really, I think there's very few instances where the accusation of appropriation is appropriate.
let's list them out. White dreadlocks,
I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that.
hair dryer in the bathtub.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Like, why, like, it's just, there's so many things. I feel like those are examples of things. There is, I don't want to say, there is a certain type of person that goes out of their way. You know how, like, most people, you walk through life and you see something and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, you're programmed, I'm programmed, and most people, I think, are programmed to see something and see, like, the good in it. Like, oh, this fucking banh mi, isn't that cool that the French cuisine meshed with the Vietnamese cuisine, and it's this delicious thing that is now a part of New Orleans culture, and that the Vietnamese embrace it, the French embrace it, the American is. It's like, we see the positive in that, whereas there's other people that will literally, like, their immediate reaction is to be like, wow, well, fucking French colonizers took their idea and like, it's like, why do you think like that? Why do you, when you see a white guy wearing dreadlocks, is your immediate thought, he's fetishizing and profiting off of black culture and blah blah blah. It's like, no, dude, he's just wearing fucking dreadlocks.
No, that guy has no money. Don't worry.
That guy has no money. He's too stoned. He's tombstone.
He's Tombstone Pizza and Nintendo, dude.
Yeah, he's going to his favorite band is probably a band like a fucking reggae band from Jamaica, black guys listening to. He's a fan of the culture.
Yeah, he's the only one not buying the bootleg from that dude.
Exactly.
He's their one sale on iTunes.
Yeah, dude. He's like, it's like, why do you look at there? And what it is there's people that they're called malcontents, and malcontent people I don't know. It's the same culture that drives when people, I call it, there's like a game that people play, the woke game, where you find, it's not something happens, there's a pressing issue in society, and very many people are angry about it, and then you express that anger. It's not that. It's almost reverse. It's almost, there's a bunch of shit in society that if you wanted to, you could go through and go, and this thing right here, think about it. Yeah. And then go down.
It's like remember that old game everyone used to play on Wikipedia where it was like 7 clicks to Hitler or whatever?
Yes.
And now it's just like you're looking at a person and being like, all right, which one of these character traits can I pick to then go, all right, now he's the worst person on earth.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, you have white dreadlocks, so you're appropriating. If you're doing this, what else are you doing? I bet you say the N-word singing along with reggae shit.
Yeah, probably.
Whatever the rabbit hole is.
Yes. And they that's a good way of putting it. 7 degrees to a problem. And they will just look at any fucking thing and be like, I bet you I'm woke enough to find out why this is actually a terrible fucking thing. Mm-hmm. And then they'll go through the mental gymnastics. Well, actually, in 1747, these people were brought here, and then this was done, and then this song came out, but then this guy made a song on this. It's like, what are we even doing right now? No, everybody sees this thing. Nobody has a problem with it. You just made people have a problem with it. Now people are more pissed off. We weren't even pissed off before. Now we're pissed off. You just made the world a more negative place. Why? Because you get fucking points for being the guy who calls it out. You get the retweets when the other fucking idiots on Twitter see somebody tweet something and go, oh, that looks like it sounds like it could be right. And then all of a sudden, you're basically telling people to be offended. Like in terms of the Redskins thing, it's a great example because when they were polled in the 90s, I think it was something like under 10% of Native Americans polled in the 90s had a problem with it. It wasn't even until 20 years later, as press came out and more people started expressing it, then they polled again. It was like something like 90%. Yeah. And it's like, what happened in those 20 years that Native Americans, you're almost like being told to be offended by something. And it's like, why?
Yeah. I think for
the grievance industry,
a lot of people, it's almost like comedy in a way where like comedy is like a thing where like, if fucking, this is like a bad example, but like Cannibal Buress has that like flick the pickle juice on your sandwich joke or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like after that, a lot of people are probably like, oh, I'm going to flick pickle juice on my sandwich, or oh shit, I do that.
Yeah.
That same response, that same like, oh shit, like they think like that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that, but not for laughter or relief or any of that type of thing. It's almost just like an outlet for an anger that you have in you already, and it's just redirecting it to that. It's like a lightning pole.
Yes.
For like negative emotions, and it doesn't even necessarily, you don't even have to like agree with whatever the person is saying on Twitter. It's just that you see that whatever they're dealing with is giving them like a anger response or a hurt response or whatever, and you're able to see a little bit of yourself in that. Mm-hmm. And then you get a little bit of that stress relief.
Yes.
Out of whatever. Yes. It could be that you fucking haven't had your job since March, or unemployment benefit cut off, or whatever the issue is at the time. But it's like, I think now in America and the world, like everyone has these burdens on their back, all this stress all the time, and there's no real active lane to get out of it, or like
Yeah.
to get help, or like to do anything, because it's like, you know, the government finally agreed on a fucking $600
Yeah.
stimulus
Yeah.
check, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so the first one you gave us was $1,200, and that was like a month and a half into the pandemic. Everything was on lockdown. It's been fucking what, 4 months since that?
Yeah.
By your math, it's like, okay, so it probably should be like at least maybe double of the last one. But like, no, let's do half. Let's do half of that.
The stimulus thing is a whole other fucking can of worms in and of itself. That pisses me off.
Yeah, and it pisses everyone off. And then
That it even took so
because
long.
of that, and there's not even like, there's nothing you can really do other than like, all right, everyone's got to vote again next time, but this time, you know, really double check to make sure that candidate's good for you and they're going to work for you. And, you know, maybe 4 years after that, we'll finally have the problem.
Yeah.
We'll be able to solve it. And it's like, no, there's nothing that you can do about it. So then you're going to get mad at fucking Billie Eilish for wearing a tank top instead of her baggy hoodie.
Yeah. Which I appreciate. How old is Billie Eilish? 18?
I don't know.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Anyway. No, it goes back to a conversation that I had with our good friend Scott Albrecht, who is just touched down in Baltimore.
Ooh.
And I think we should get him on next week's podcast, by the way.
I'm down for that.
For fucking sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were having a talk a couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago at this point. It was actually, we were on a job with ATB. Whenever it was that we were at the office there, and we walked to some like sub shop or something.
Nice.
And on our lunch break, so we walked from your old office in by Union Brewing, and he was like, he had just bought a motorcycle, and he said, you know, it's crazy. Like ever since I got a motorcycle, I feel like there's like I'm noticing all these motorcycles everywhere, and I was like, yeah. What's interesting about that is that it's not like there are more motorcycles this week than there were last week. Your mind is, because it's something that you're aware of now, your mind is tuned into motorcycles, whereas you would see just as many last week, but you wouldn't have consciously registered or even given it a passing thought. Yeah. But now your mind is tuned into it, so now you're aware of it and now you're observing it. And that's an analogy for all of conscious perception. I look at our minds like antenna, like radio antenna. In that there are, when they talk about all the different realms of possibilities that exist, and they talk about multiple universes where there's a universe where we're having this exact same podcast except my face is upside down or something. You know how people say that shit?
We're
it's like
straight-faced.
Yeah. Or
no
yeah.
laughs.
Yeah. Straight face. Exist all these different realities, just like right now I think I've talked about this before. I use the analogy of a radio, where when you're driving down the road listening to the radio, you tune your dial to a specific frequency, and it forces this little component in your radio to resonate at that frequency, which forces it to channel that frequency in the air through your speakers. Now, when I'm listening to 101.9 Light FM, doesn't mean that 106.5, Mix 106.5 isn't playing. It just means all those things exist. I'm tuned into 101.9, therefore that's what I'm listening to. All those motorcycles always existed. You didn't tune into that, and therefore you didn't even notice it. So when you have people that are constantly pointing out the bad in things, it says to me that their mind is tuned in to that side of reality. They are tuned into seeing the bad things. When I see a guy wearing dreadlocks, I think, oh, that's a guy who probably smokes a lot of weed, probably really into reggae music, probably really enjoys it. He's probably one of the most, like, if you were talking to him, he's probably the most anti-racist person you'd ever meet. He'd definitely be like one of those guys like, dude, fucking peace and love, bro. You know, like, that's what I think when I see a dreadlock guy, a white guy. But other people looking at the same guy would think this guy is fetishizing black culture and blah, blah, blah. And it's like to the same thing, but you're looking at it differently. I was watching Harold and Kumar a couple months ago at this point. Fucking, first of all, hilarious movie. Harold and Kumar, Guantanamo Bay. Hilarious movie. And what made it so funny is that in the 2000s, we didn't have this very touchy, sensitive culture around racial humor and things like that. And Harold and Kumar did it so well because they literally made fun of every single group. Like, they went out of their way to make fun of every single racial and ethnic group. I mean, and it was like I was high when I was watching it. I was just noticing like every new scene would be like a different race of people and them just going through all the funny stereotypes. And so by the end of the movie, every single race got made fun of. And that's what made it great. And I'm watching this in my 2020 state of mind where I'm constantly being bombarded with seeing people trying to tell me to see all the negative in things. And I could literally, I'm sure you've had this experience too when you watch a movie from the 90s and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I never realized how homophobic that was. Wow, I never realized how racist this movie was. And it's like, people weren't necessarily thinking that way back then. It's not like it was just racist and homophobic and the culture just accepted it and said, yeah, we don't fucking care. It was that when you watch a movie like Harold and Kumar, yeah, it was racial humor. And people watched it and they saw the funny in it as opposed to seeing the bad in it.
Yeah. But also at the same time, too, it's like looking back, it's like, oh, yeah, this is like a movie with two like brown leads.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like two white dudes going around doing all this shit. It's like them going through a drive-through and the guy saying special sauce is animal semen. It's like, it's just funny.
Yeah, that's why it works. That's why it worked then. That's why, and you know, so as far as all that shit goes, I can't even relate to the people that think, I can't, because I don't think it's because I'm ignorant. I think it's because I am positive. I'm a positive person. And I think...
positively racist.
Positively racist. The world is a better place when we're able to laugh at ourselves. The world is a better place when we're able to laugh at our own jokes.